Hello, everyone. My name is Hilary, and I just want to give a quick introduction to Power of Work and kind of what we do, and then we can go over any questions everyone has, and just kind of figure out the best way that we can support you. So, Power of Work is a nonprofit organization, and our goal eventually is because I feel a few of you guys have asked me like why we do this. And the overall goal is to like have a large impact on the world by kind of creating an awesome network of people who are supporting each other professionally. And doing that, I've been doing that myself personally anyways, and so I thought it'd be good to just continue that and with help of friends to get people together. Typically, we are looking to our overall goal is to help with employment. We think that's kind of the first way to help a lot of major issues and problems throughout the world is if more people are employed. And so we are trying to refine our skills by starting off with people who are just kind of looking for career changes, since that's the easiest way to start. And then eventually we'd like to help people who are really in need, ideally maybe veterans who are coming back and looking to join the workforce, or even recent people who have come out of jail, or people who are homeless. But before we get there, we need to have a good network and actually like refine our ability to help. And a major thing I've seen in my career is that when you are applying to a job, if you know anyone, there's many benefits to that. And a lot of it has to do with not only having the inside knowledge of somebody to be like, oh, hey, like I've worked with that person, or this is like kind of the company, this is what they're looking for. I'm kind of some inside scoop in that sense. But also when you have somebody refer you, right? They've like handed your resume to the hiring manager or whatnot. There's a lot larger likelihood that you'll actually get looked at. And when I apply to jobs, I think people are disheartened and they're used to, you apply to one and you kind of fall in love with it and you get all excited about it. And then you might not interview, or you kind of just slowly chug through. I usually like to kind of do a larger scale where I apply to lots of jobs. And so if I kind of want to get looked at and be able to interview, I kind of almost think it's like a 10-to-1 ratio. So in terms of applying to 10 jobs, if you want like one interview. So I personally usually aim for like 30 positions. One reason why I do that is because I've known as a hiring manager before, a lot of times the job's already spoken for, or it's like an old listing, right? So as you do your job search, making sure that you're looking for items that are new is a key, because there's a lot of old listings out there. Even if they sound great, sometimes it's just not worth it because they're most likely already filled, or they're just not looking for somebody and it's just kind of been there lingering. So that's something that I found. And then when I'm going through resumes, I find that I really don't have a lot of time, and sometimes for a position you'll typically have 100 or so people apply for a spot, and so it's a quick kind of 30-second glance for each, and it's usually I like to kind of just look at that summary at the top and see if I think the person has it, and I might just scan the titles, and then if I'm a little bit more interested, then I might read some of it. But a lot of times that it's a quick, like if you go through 100, I typically like to find 5 to 10 of those 100 that I might actually want to do a phone screening with, right? So you have to quickly go through that. And so that's kind of part of what we want to do here at Power of Work, is to help people and to kind of broaden our network. And I know that we can speak a little bit more to it in the sense that already we've had some unique kind of fun connections within clinical research. The field is pretty like it even though it's big, it feels small in the sense of having connections goes a long way. And just even randomly, and I'll have Jesse speak a little bit later on his own experience with Power of Work, but I just thought it was kind of funny where we had Robin here, who's a friend of mine, and we were helping her interview for a position that was kind of like a associate director role, so like a pretty high level role. and we were interview prepping her for it. And then later we were also prepping Jessie for a role. And it happened to be that I knew which company Jessie was interviewing for, but I don't think I knew which one Robin was. And they're basically like now working together. They both are starting at the same little biotech, and it's a really small world in that sense. Or for example, we had Mandy was working at a biotech, and then she helped Logan get in. And so there's a lot of ways that we can support each other, and that it is quite useful to have the connections. And so that's kind of what we like to do here at Power of Work. Let's see, Jessie, are you free right now? Anyways, camera's off, so.
Yep, I'm sorry, I'm driving at the moment, so yeah. But yes.
No worries. If you want to give us a little introduction on kind of who you are and what your story with Power of Work is.
Okay, love to. Thank you, Hilary, and welcome everyone to this presentation. And Power of Work has really changed my life because I was in career facility management, project management, and I wanted to pivot into clinical research. And so by joining Power of Work, I was able to get the experience with the project based and also the practice work and just doing the internship. And it gave me that experience to be able to interview with Ultragenics. And because of previous Power of Work alumni, we're able to have a strong connection there. And so I was able to then move on to become a clinical document specialist. And I did that for a year. And as Hilary mentioned, I now work with Robin at a biotech, as a clinical trial associate. So it's really a great industry, and it's a great to have the network and the different, just connections and knowledge base. And the videos that Hilary produces are top notch. So hope everyone can feel welcome, and also reach out to me if you ever need assistance or a network, because that is what Power of Work does. It provides connection, knowledge, and ready network for everyone.
Thank you. And I think Jesse's story is classic in the sense too that I had invited him to this, and he was kind of getting into it, but then had his own job, so he kind of was not quite into it until later when he finally was like, okay, I'm 100% doing this. And then once he was actually committed, pretty quickly we were able to find him an opening and have him apply. And so it's not instant, right? Nick has a similar story in the sense that Nick was looking and we kept helping him. We did multiple aspects with Nick. We did his resume review, and then we kind of would create these job charts, which is something that we do. So we'll look for buzzwords, if you're remote, where you're at, what different jobs you're looking for, and try to create these little charts for you. And then and we kept having him apply, and it took a little while. And then he got a couple interviews with different connections that we had. And then eventually he also was working at Ultragenics too. So it takes a little while. Oh, and then from Ultragenics, he's now also a CTA. So that's one reason why I like TMF, is that it's a good stepping point to a lot of other jobs. And part of what we want to do here at Power of Work is to also introduce you to the other fields. So we were going to see if we can have Mandy talk to us about regulatory. And so I can kind of give a little introduction to kind of how TMF fits in with all the different departments, and kind of how it all runs together to get a medicine approved, basically, right? And but yeah, so it's a lot of different connections into lots of different fields, and that allows you to explore. I think overall clinical research is extremely lucrative and really enjoyable in the sense that you are able to help create medicine that patients need, and I think that's incredibly rewarding. It's also, in my opinion, one of the most flexible industries I've found. Now, there are certain positions that are less flexible, or they want you more in the office. But in general, TMF is usually very remote and very relaxed in a sense. A lot of times TMF is basically you have documents, clinical documents that you're looking at, and there's different steps to QC the document. And we've tried to highlight this throughout the videos, but you are looking to see what's wrong with the document and making sure that it's ready for inspection. And the idea is that when a clinical research is being conducted for a study and you're trying to make sure that the drug is ready to be approved by the regulatory agencies, such as like the FDA or EMA, which is Europe, and all these documents are being created like the whole time, like stuff keeps happening, documents are created, and then at the end of the study, you need to make sure that all the documents are together and ready for your inspection. So the best way to do that is as the study progresses, you want to constantly be on top of your documents, making sure that they're filed, that they're organized. For example, a classic issue is that a document will have like a missing signature. And so that's like an issue where it shows that if there's a missing signature, it means that the study team wasn't on top of things, right? It wasn't checking to make sure that all the documents are complete. So that is an example of an incomplete document. And then it can be like misfiled, right? It could be put in a different section. And the idea is that the regulatory agencies such as the FDA want to see that the study is being properly managed, right? Because if it's not being managed correctly, then like how do they know that everything is done correctly and that this drug that you say is ready to be approved and sold and given to people to help ideally change their lives? But if there are issues in your like management, there might be issues in like the medication. It's kind of like an indication that something could have gone wrong, and maybe you don't have the right safety documents or you weren't properly running the study. And so there are major issues where companies have spent, it's multiple millions of dollars to run a study, and if it doesn't go well and you don't actually get the ability to sell the drug, you've lost a lot of time and money, right? And so it's a pretty significant thing. But because it's so easy, a lot of times it's one of those things that all the study team and the people who are working together to make this happen is like an easier administrative aspect of the job. And so it kind of falls to the bottom of the list of things to do. And that's why TMF can actually be pretty lucrative, even though it's fairly easy, because it's something that like not everyone wants to do, if that makes sense. And so that's one reason why I kind of want people to be aware of that it's, I think it's exciting and fun, but a lot of people don't. And so that's why it works out to be a good career in that sense. But I don't want people to come in and be like, wow, this is super boring, and not be interested in a future career in clinical research, because the TMF can be it's just a stepping point to a lot of other different career options. So as Jesse mentioned, and where Nick is at too, they are clinical trial like associates or assistants. And that's when somebody is kind of like the junior person to run the study. And then there's usually a clinical trial manager, and that's the kind of the more senior person who's kind of more so making the decisions on how the study should be run. And then you have other groups that work with you to do the study. There's a lot of data, right? A lot of data is being collected from the patients and being organized. And so you have usually a whole data department. You have a data manager that works with you. And one of the things they do is they create something called an ECRF, which is like a form that the patient fills out, or kind of the information gets collected with the patient visits. And so that's an important role, is to figure out how to best create this form. It's kind of almost like a questionnaire, if you want to think of it like that. So it can have like the patient's vitals and things like that, but also like if it's a study where you're measuring muscle mass, and if they're able to continue to build muscle, then you might have like a gait test where they walk, and you're going to be looking at their gait and see if they're able to walk like a longer distance because they have increased their muscles. So that's just kind of an example of some items that could be collected on this form, which is a good kind of buzzword to know for clinical research. And that would be, the designing of it would be done by data manager. So that's like a potential career route if you are interested in data. There's also project management, which happens within the clinical realm. Usually they're their own separate group, and a lot of what they do is like forecasting the budget and the overall like organization of how the clinical study gets run. And it is something that is we like reports up to leadership, and they utilize that data to, let's say, okay, we have $1 billion. How many studies can we run? Do we think it's going to be lucrative? What do we need? How quickly do we need the patients to be enrolled? What do we think? What's the current data on how fast these studies typically go? And so how long can we take us until we can get like FDA approval and therefore then have ability to sell and then have revenue? So there's a whole project management department typically to help run and organize a study. And so sometimes you can come in, if you already have previous experience or management experience, you can come in at that level. Or sometimes what you can do is you can come in at a project coordinator level and then move up quickly, ideally like within a year, to more of the project manager level if you have experience, and also like a PMP, which is a project management like certificate. For example, Jesse has an MBA, which is a really useful item. And ideally that means that if Jesse can prove himself as a CTA, then he can become a CTM, which is kind of the overall goal Jesse has, because a CTM, which is the role I'm in now, I feel like is a very extremely lucrative role, but then also not, it's usually within the 9 to 5. It's not super crazy. And you're not having to worry as much about people management, which can be, which is good if you want to go to the next level in terms of being more of like an executive or an associate director and a director level. But I personally probably want to just stay here. I absolutely love it. I make really good money and I really like it. And it's in the sense of more than I need to support my family. And then I have also like a really good quality of life, right? And I'm doing something I think is really interesting. And then also I feel like it's very fulfilling. So I think that's where, I've talked to Jesse, and that's where probably he wants to go. And then with his MBA, that should be able to help him get that CTM job sooner, right? Now he just started as a CTA, so it'll probably take him at least a year. And hopefully this gives you kind of a little understanding of the different roles and how long it takes to be in them. I think both Jesse and Nick were in their TMF role for about a year before jumping to more of a CTA role. There's later, I want to have my friend Krista come and do a little presentation for us. And she does like supply management, which is basically you have this medication, right? And it's being sent to the sites for patients to get the drug. And so this drug needs to be properly managed. And there's a whole supply aspect of how much drug do we need to run the entire study. And then there's also like a lot of very sensitive aspects about like when will this lot expire. And so trying to figure out how long you need to, how many patients you need and what it goes out to. There's a system called IXRS that ideally manages that. But there's definitely you need people to help kind of control and do a whole bunch of different like labeling. Certain countries have certain regulations on how they want the drug to look. So there's lots of little things in there. And so what's kind of interesting, I feel like, in this industry is that people can move around. Like once you kind of get in, you explore, and all of the knowledge you get is useful. So if you've been in TMF for a year and then you go to a CTA job, that's helpful for you to run your CTA and position and to be able to learn and grow. Whereas if you do some things, I've seen people move around basically. So if you've done regulatory for a little bit, then you can move into something else. And so there's a lot of flexibility. And as a result, people usually welcome that. People welcome people moving around because you have more experience. So if something comes up, like you're more useful in a sense. And so that's something that I think is rewarding in this career path, is that there's flexibility, so that if I ever do get bored or don't like what I'm doing, or I want to keep learning, but maybe I don't want to go up, I can kind of go horizontal and keep learning new things and being being able to still contribute to the end goal of producing medicine that saves lives or just improves lives, but in different areas, so I don't have to do the same thing for the rest of my life. So yeah, there's lots of little aspects to clinical research. I think I skipped over regulatory. As I mentioned, we have our friend Mandy who will hopefully speak to that shortly for us. And that has to do with more of the filing, right? So we talk about TMF filing as in filing documents. We talk about regulatory as taking like packets and submitting them to these regulatory agencies such as the FDA. So they're kind of like the point person for the FDA or whatever country that you're in and you're trying to get the drug approval. So you can put together like an application saying, I want to start a clinical trial. And then there's a whole process for that. And then you later, when you're done, we've talked about the TMF being really important and the TMF needs to be cleaned and ready. Right after that, then the next thing is the different regulatory personnel will do their job to write the appropriate forms and documents to then say, hey, FDA, we're ready. Like, this is what we want to do. We're all good. Can you come inspect us? And so it's a lot of like interweaving of different groups working together, which is fun because then you get to also learn about different fields where you could potentially grow into. So our overall thoughts with TMF is that you contribute to everything. This is my son. Do you want to say hi, Luke? Luke, you have to say hi. Hi. Yeah.
What up, Luke?
Why don't you go? Okay. And so basically, there's lots of aspects to it, but I kind of wanted to give a little overview on, like, so I've talked a little bit on the different career paths within Power of Work, and now to look at the potentially, okay, silly goose. All right, time to go finish your food, okay? And then basically, let's kind of talk quickly about what Power of Work can do, right? So basically, there are lots of things that we can do. One aspect is that we like to do, like I mentioned, the job charts. We can do resume reviews and try to align your job description to your resume. I think it's a big win that a lot of people kind of skip over. They might have a generic resume and they kind of go with it. They just apply to everything, and that kind of can be easy, but I've seen it just work better and a higher likelihood that someone's going to look at it if the words within the job description kind of show up in your resume, right? So if there's certain buzzwords and there's certain things they're looking for, you want to highlight that, especially in just being very clear about that. You might be like, oh, well, I've managed a whole bunch of facilities and therefore I have this experience, and that, you know, that proves that I have been working collaboratively and I've worked with different departments. But you want to really spell it out if they spell it out in the job description. If they're saying we're looking for somebody that has this, you can say I have this, and then you can kind of dive a little deeper into like your exact experience with it. But you kind of want to make sure you hit those buzzwords. And then you also, one thing we can do is then also like interview prep. Yes, but you have to do it in the living room. Okay, go. We'll see if that works. But yeah, so you can do interview prep. That's probably one of my favorite because I think that a lot of people skip this, and you really need to be really ready to answer lots of different questions, be it behavioral questions or aspects that they're talking about within the actual, like what the day-to-day functions are for the job. So lots of different aspects that we can help with. And then, as we mentioned, talking about your like developing the skills on TMF, right? And the connections. So those are kind of all the different aspects we touched on. I wanted to quickly go into kind of your next steps. Like if you have done you've watched some of the videos, right? So kind of your overall timeline and program should be that you watch the videos, get familiar, make sure that I think the ones that are on TMF QCing and the actual kind of like day-to-day work are really important. And then we have some on the TMF system, right? We usually work in Viva, is one of the more popular systems. And we have more of those, so we can put those out there. Right now we kind of need to edit them. And then what you should do is, once you kind of feel familiar, is actually test yourself, because a lot of times it's easy to sit back and just listen and feel like you're getting it. The best way to actually do something is to actually do some hands-on work. And that helps a lot, because it helps in your interview where they ask you, well, what have you done? If you can speak to, oh, I've done a completeness review and I've done the work, then you can speak to it a lot better, versus like, oh, I'm familiar with it. Yes, I'll close that for you. Thank you for opening all that. And so this link is in the, yeah. Why? I say thank you for giving it to me. This document that I put the link to in the meeting invite, okay, is about how to kind of start the practice project. Now, Jesse was very nice in saying that, the videos are awesome. This is a very early stage, right? We've been, this initially was just me helping some friends get jobs, and it's been slowly developing and getting not professional, but more and more organized and nicer in that sense. So if you can follow the link and you'll get to this page, you want to open the folder, which shows you the documents to the site. And then you have the tracker, which is what you will be filling out, right? And the idea is you are practicing to do an actual TMF review, as though you were in you have started a new job and they have a whole bunch of TMF documents, and your job is to review and QC these documents. Now, typically you would do it within a system. And so you'd not only review it, but you'd make sure that the system matches the data on the document. So that's one aspect of this that is not something that we can really do unless we were an actual company and we had our own Viva subscription, which is really, really expensive. So maybe in the future, but for now, we just have to have videos and show you guys kind of what it's like. I actually just got my own Viva access for my own company that I work at. And so I'm hoping that I can get a little bit more up to speed on any sort of new aspects of Viva, because they are a very dynamic software that they're constantly building and getting better and better. So some of our items are a little bit older, but the overall gist of how you QC a TMF document, you can practice here. So you open up the tracker, make sure you make a copy. This is a template tracker, so it's a lot nicer if we don't have people writing on this one. So make a copy, and I suggest put your own name and go ahead and just like share it with me instantly so you don't forget. And then the idea is you follow the steps to make sure that you are properly reviewing the documents, and they on purpose are documents that we've created that have mistakes on them. So the idea is you're supposed to catch the mistakes and document them in the tracker. And this is kind of what you would do on a day-to-day aspect of a TMF job. Now, even if you want to go into a CTA job or you want to go into a project management job, knowing the documents is really important. I think there are several different videos that go over different types of documents and some examples, but this is useful stuff to do no matter what. And another thing you can do for your overall development is kind of, you can do it before or after, but I have been sending out the link to the GCP training that's through a different company. And I find that really useful because it's a different certificate that you can put on your resume, and that should ideally help you to show that you've learned and gained knowledge. And so far that we found that that's been enough to be able to get some hands-on experience by doing this practice project. We do want to flesh it out and make kind of more of like a final exam, which will hopefully be coming shortly. But with learning the videos, watching them, they're on YouTube, so you can listen to them as you're driving to work. We've tried to make it as accessible as possible. And doing the practice project, and then ideally working with me and the Power of Work team to understand where let's say you have questions on it, or going over and catching where you've made the mistakes or you haven't caught different errors. And then the overall goal is for you to be able to review documents and properly QC them in a pretty quick manner, That's also something that's really useful for the job, is if you can be pretty quick on it. And then there's the data entry aspect of entering it into the system. But then that's basically the job, is watching these documents, and as you go through, making sure that there's no errors and that they're ready. Kind of the next level to the job is knowing the regulations, which I have tried to do different videos on that, so that can help you. If you go for a basic TMF job and you can speak to different regulations, that's a huge bonus that can definitely help you land the job. So yeah, let's go through. If anyone has any questions, we have just, let's say, it looks like 4 minutes left on the meeting. But yeah, go ahead, see if you have any questions. Go for it.
Are there other sites aside from the Bruno that we should do?
No, go ahead and just start with Bruno. We have some made, and then I think, but I'm not too sure if they're completed yet. So just start with the Bruno site.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions? Or we can also do a follow-up meeting, let's say next week, and by then you've had a chance to try to go through this. And I think it would be good to maybe go through it all together, where you guys are all looking at your thing, and we can ask, like, okay, what did you put for here? What was the first document that you saw an issue on, and what was the issue? If we can kind of walk through it together, so that you can feel pretty comfortable on what, your skills to be able to QC. But I found that a lot of times people get in here and they look at the practice project, and then once they actually start to do it, they're like, oh wait, actually I'm not too sure what I'm doing. And you can go back to the different videos. And like I said, I'm happy to help too and walk you through the items. And what I found is that in the past, it's usually taken people about 2 weeks or so to watch videos. And if you do the practice project, feel pretty good to the point where you can interview, right? Because it's a short time frame, I usually like to work with people. Let's say they land the job, I like to still work with them to make sure that they actually are like really ready to get started. Because when you start the job, you really want to do well, right? So it's not over once you get the interview or you land the job. You still need to kind of continue to make sure that you're ready to actually work, because you have such little experience, because you're just kind of doing like a one version of it, right? There is, and I think it might be in here. So there's the TMF reference model link. Let's see, I don't see it, but there should be a link to actually the TMF reference model. So this one is a custom one. Yep, see how it says links with documents for Power of Work. Hopefully this works. This is something that took us a while, but this is a general standard TMF reference model document. But what we went ahead and did is, in the far right is sample documents. And I would highly recommend looking through column O and opening up those links. I think you have to initially request access to be able to get in there, but this is a giant document library of previous documents that a lot of them have been redacted, and just documents that we found online and things like that. But basically this will get you a sense of what the documents are like, and that can really help you understand what should be in there. And before you would actually, like, let's say you land the job, but you haven't actually started yet, I would definitely say that you need to go through here and like have a really good understanding of what all the documents are, because it will just help you speed up so quickly in the beginning of your job. So yeah. Any other questions? All right, hopefully that's a good start for you guys to get going. I will continue to look for jobs for you guys. And if you feel comfortable and ready, send me your resumes, we can review them. And if you want to go ahead and start applying to things, just know that before you do the interview, you should ideally have completed the practice project and have kind of gotten feedback from me and feel pretty comfortable about speaking to it. And if there's certain aspects you want to go over, I'm always happy to. Or if there's videos, you know, I make a mention of something and you want to dive deeper into it, totally happy.